So you want to drink in Sweden, do you? Well, you're in luck, because I'm going to tell you how to do it, so you don't have any party fails, so you're ready for the party, and you're ready to rock. Hey guys, what's going on? Andrew coming at you. This one we're going to kind of talk about alcohol culture and drinking, and like the right ways to go about going to a party. So it's going to be a couple different things, and we're going to go into it compared to like the United States here in Sweden if you were someone that's born and coming to Sweden. So a couple things with the cultural difference. First, we're going to talk about how Swedes drink as opposed to like Americans drink. I find it's much more common for Americans to have like a beer with a meal, or maybe go out on a Tuesday or Thursday night and have a couple beers. Like in the States, I had a few times in my life where go out with a friend, maybe have 2 or 3 drinks and eat a burger or something and have a conversation. And I found that was like perfectly normal, or it would be really normal for someone to say, hey, let's have a beer and talk. And I go to a bar on a Wednesday night or a Thursday night, and I would meet somebody and have a beer or two. Like I wouldn't get wasted or anything like that. It was just about kind of the conversation, almost like it was our fika, if you will. A couple guys getting together and just talking. Now, no doubt that happens here in Sweden, but Swedes tend to binge drink more than they drink every once in a while. So what I mean is like most Swedes will drink one or 2 days a week, and they'll drink like a lot of alcohol at once, where it's maybe more common in the States that if you drink 2 days a week or 3 days a week, you don't necessarily drink so much at once as much as it's about having the drinks. There's no doubt that there are big drinkers in the States, but what I mean is like binge culture in Sweden is just like the way the drinking culture is, at least the way I can see it. Where in the States, binge drinking does happen, where, binge drinking a lot of alcohol in one day. It does happen, but it tends to happen in college, and then I don't see it really happen so much outside of college. But I would say a big drinking day in the States would probably be Sundays, just because of American football, which is interesting. And yeah, of course, people watch football here in Sweden as well, but I think it's more of a drinking holiday or drinking day in the States could actually be a Sunday, having a couple drinks, watching a sporting event. So I always find that to be interesting. Now, buying the alcohol is going to be interesting because if you're in Sweden and you get invited to a party, 90% of the time you have to take your own alcohol with you. Whereas in the States, if you got invited to a party, maybe there was a beer and you paid a couple bucks and you could drink it, or your friend got the beer, you can come and take it. And it's not about bringing your own beer. There's always like beer at the party or stuff to drink at the party. The host always picks up the alcohol. Where in Sweden, you grab a bag and you take alcohol with you. A handful of times over the years, people have provided alcohol, which has always been nice. But even in those situations, I still brought my own alcohol with me. And almost in a weird way, the times I've actually gone to a party in Sweden and there was alcohol for me to drink, I was almost frustrated because I had my alcohol with me. I had the beers that I wanted to drink, if you will, like the kind of beers that I liked, and I didn't want to drink their generic, like, cheaper beer, if you will, but then I had to because that's just like rude to not do it. So that's another thing. One of the reasons this is different just simply has to do with the fact that if you're in the United States, beer and alcohol is going to cost much cheaper. Like I can get 30-pack of beer for relatively cheap, but each state's a little bit different. In some states, it's really easy to grab and find beers. In my state, Pennsylvania, you can't sell beer and alcohol. Or I'm sorry, you can't sell beer and spirits in the same place. So that's a bit different. So that's a bit interesting. But you can buy a beer in a lot of different places in the States, where in Sweden, you can buy less strong beer at the grocery store, but it's not maybe the greatest option, but if you need to do it, you can do it. Otherwise, you have to buy from the Systembolaget. And the Systembolaget has hours in place, and it's not convenient. And the reason it is because they want to limit the amount of alcohol that people drink. Sometimes I feel it does the opposite effect, where it's actually created binge drinking culture in Sweden. Maybe binge drinking culture has always been here in Sweden, but I feel like sometimes it encourages people to buy out more alcohol than what they need because they know that the hours are kind of weird and crazy, where in the States maybe I would purchase less alcohol because I knew I could always get it again and it would be easy to get. In Sweden, maybe I will buy more beer than I would normally buy just because I know it's not going to be open on Sunday or the next day, and I want to make sure I have enough beers. So that's something that I find to be extremely interesting. Now, with this drinking culture in mind, I find that at most American parties, you go, you hang out, you have a couple drinks. When I was in college, we would play something called beer pong. And now you play with water, but back in the day you had beer and you would drink out of it, but for cleaning reasons you would do that. But there could be some form of drinking games that we play, or activity that we play. But for the most part, I feel like in States, you just kind of just hung out. You just hang out, have a good time, talk with people. That's typically what I've seen. Where in Sweden, a lot of parties and things that I go to, it's always something organized where there's an icebreaker or some kind of game or activity that people are going to do. And on my personal level, I'm not like the biggest fan of that because I don't know, I feel like it always feels forced to me. But I understand that Swedes need a way to like open up and stuff. But I kind of appreciate, I think for me personally, I like having activities that people can play when they want to play, maybe darts, maybe pool, or like I said, beer pong. But I don't like being forced into a game where I have to talk to a bunch of people I don't know so early. But it is something you see in a lot of Swedish parties here, which is interesting. Now, if you're going to go out to the bar or the club here in Sweden, you will typically find that in the States, it's not that weird. You can go to the bar whenever you want to. You can go early if you want to. But in Sweden, you don't go to the bar at 7 o'clock. I mean, you can, but you don't. Swedes tend to pregame at home, drink some alcohol at home to get like feeling good, and then they go to the bar because it's so expensive. Where in the States, you could go to the bar early if you wanted to. You could go to the bar at 7 and be there till 12. And you're in most places, unless you're like in New York City or a major city, you're not going to spend as much money as you would if you were here in Sweden. So people tend to go to the club at night, and maybe they have a beer or two at the club, maybe 3, but they tend to kind of get a little tipsy before they come into the club to save themselves some money. And that's something that I don't see happening in the States nearly as much. One thing that is different is there's definitely drinking culture in the States. But I find that alcohol and Swedes kind of go together like this, meaning that Americans don't necessarily need to have alcohol to loosen up, but it is common to have a beer and chat with people or in social situations to drink. But I feel like in Sweden, it's almost required in a way because Swedes are so shy and reserved, and like the society is shy and reserved, that they kind of need that little extra help to loosen up and get better. And I can just give you an example. Anytime and every time I ever go to a party, being the one American dude, nobody ever talks to me for like the first 2-3 hours, really. And then after a couple of drinks, suddenly people are talking English with me and asking me all these questions. And that's just because they need that little bit of extra help to loosen up. So alcohol is a big part of Swedish culture. I mean, it's in all of their holidays. There's all kinds of drinking songs and skål and things like that. So it's a very part of their culture. But one other thing I'll say with drinking culture, which I think is really important, Swedes tend to underage drink. I think it's more common here in Sweden than it is in the States. And that's just because the alcohol drinking age is younger. And plus you have gymnasium where you have kids 16 to 19 going to school together. So maybe the kids that are a little bit older, that have access to it. It just seems more common to me. Underage drinking here is more common from what I gather, what I've heard. But the nice thing is, and this is why I'm saying it's not a big, massive problem. It's like in Sweden, if you're 18 years old, you can drink, but you can't purchase your own alcohol. And I guess the hope is there that the people that are drinking at the bar can be refused service if they're too drunk, and so they can be protected. So I do find that to be interesting. Sweden does not have the big problem with drunk driving as America does. And this is like our little dirty little secret is a lot of bars and places you have to drive a car to. And if you're going to drink, you're going to have to drive home. And our drinking, a DUI for us is 0.8. Where in Sweden it's 0.2. Which is like you just so much as sniff alcohol. You just take a sniff or a whiff. You're going to not pass. And so the laws here are so strict with it. But also, there's no excuse really to drink and drive in Sweden. I'm not saying there's an excuse in the States either, but hear me out. Like, there are so many options in place. Like, you can take the bus, public transportation, you can catch a ride. If you go camping or go somewhere, there's always a person that's not going to drink to do it. And that's just because the law here is so harsh. If you get hit with it, you don't want to do it. Where in the States, I also feel, I forget what I said before, I also feel there's no excuse in a lot of cases because you have things like Uber now. We have a lot of options where you can pay to get a ride in a car. That I almost feel the same way, that there shouldn't be any excuse to drink and drive at all. But I just feel like it does happen sometimes, and it happens because of the fact that you need to have a car in Sweden. And I have no doubt that our drunk driving accidents are much higher, and other issues with alcohol are much higher. So that's one of the negative that comes with it. So I'm actually thankful we're not as big of binge drinkers in the United States as, like, say, people in Sweden. So just to recap, make sure you bring your own beer to a party. Check the hours of the system blog it so you have that as well. Be prepared to play some games because you will be playing some games. And lastly, parties can go late. Swedes can go really late. Typically in the States, I was done at 2. Swedes can sometimes go till 4 or 5 in the morning because after the bar, there's an after party sometimes as well. So be prepared. Pace yourself if you're going to drink with Swedes. Pace yourself. Be prepared for a long night and have fun. But most importantly, be safe. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Hej då!